challenges in business development between India and Japan. I would like to tell once again that we are having this panel discussion. The topic is challenges in business development between India and Japan. The moderator is Rajeev Gupta. Our panelists are Mr. Anil Raj, founder of Raj Group Japan, Mr. Abhishek Choudhury, VP Industrial Relation, Indo-Japan Business Council, then Mr. Sunil Kulkarni, CEO Fidel Technologies KK. I would like to brief introduce Mr. Rajeev Gupta, a moderator. Rajeev Gupta is a serial entrepreneur and has a diverse interest based in the Northeast and also in the parts of the country. He has many firsts to credit his, including set up India's first fully integrated modern farm to grow fresh roses for export. Exporting fresh cut flowers to Japan was no small feat, which he ably executed. He pivoted from fresh flowers to home textiles to fixed price retailers and sales promotion companies in Japan. He has now set up Northeast India's first Japan-focused enterprise under the banner of Japan Center of Excellence and promotes youth for Japan. He is an alumni of the erstwhile famous Student East Eminent School, Shillong, and the premier institution BITS Pilani, as well as ASCI Hyderabad. With the JEXI, he is keen developed to good quality of human capital from Northeast region of India to cater to the growing demand in aging Japan and also Japanese enterprises in India and around the world. Over to you, Mr. Rajeev.
Good afternoon to everybody. Konbanwa, namaste, and a warm welcome to this business session at Konnichiwa Pune 21. We are just on time. The topic for this session is challenges in business development between India and Japan. The format for this session, we would like to keep in terms of a round of questions, which will be rotated among the panelists. The panelists will then also get the opportunity to introduce themselves and during the first round. We'll get the views from everybody and then take it forward to the second set and the third set as the time permits. For the benefit of the audience, I have with me a lineup of an esteemed panelists who are entrepreneurs having made a mark for themselves in Japan over a number of years. Over the next 1 hour or so, let us hear from them, and hopefully at the end of the session, we can have some great learning and great takeaways. In the sequence, I would like to give a brief introduction, of course, of the body, starting with Mr. Anil Raj, an ex-techie from the banking domain, and his business ranges from Indian chain of restaurants to schools, travel, leisure, imports, exports, etc. His business success he attributes to two main mantras: create a need or address one. Look forward to hearing. We're going to the next panelist, Mr. Sunil Kulkarni. He is the CEO of Fidel Group 97. He is one of our great technocrats. He and his team works closely with SMEs as well as top-tier Japanese companies in the area of technology, localizing and consulting services. In the world of globalization and securing a business is important. Patents and trademarks play an important role in this regard. We have with us Mr. Abhishek Choudhury. He is the Vice President also of Indo-Japan Business Council and one of the key stakeholders in sort of implementing this program where we are participating today. He is the Director of NanoBiz India Private Limited, a boutique consulting. helping Japanese companies expand their business in India and US. He is an Indian patent agent and also recipient of for his excellent contribution in the field of patents. Again, legal issues to become stable, and therefore proper documentation, contracts, accounting legalities, etc. need to be taken care of. We would like to hear this perspective from Mr. Harshad Rathod, who is a practicing lawyer, mainly in the civil and corporate laws. He provides legal advice to various Indian and Japanese companies for cross-border M&A and business alliances and disputes. He's a legal advisor to various companies in India from diverse fields of industries like automobile, biotech, retail, fintech, etc. And he also represents Japanese law firm as their Indian desk in India. With this short introduction, welcome all. Thank you for being with us today, and look forward to an hour of constructive deliberations, which can have a lot of impact on the audience to take away some facts, which I'm sure you will have a lot to give. I'll start with the first question that outlined and take it in sequence to get a perspective from everybody. So one of the things that is noticed is there is a vast difference in the Indian style of decision making and the Japanese style. My question here is, what are the main reasons? Then, do you feel that long time decisions and discussions that the Japanese take is very frustrating? And hence, does it require an ecosystem in the business? Do we need to actually develop an ecosystem where both sides are able to understand the business aspects of both countries? What should the ecosystem contain? So it's divided in two parts. The decision making by the Japanese, is it a deterrent? And what do we involve? Do we really need to build an ecosystem to actually achieve results? And what should it involve? So Anil-san, I'll start with you. And with your years of experience, I'm sure you have a lot to say about this.
Thank you, Rajeev-san. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you were breaking in between. I don't know if everybody else have faced that problem or not. So some parts of the questions were broken. So yeah, I understand that in general you were looking at decision making process of India and Japan. So basically, having been here for 22 years and having been into business between India and Japan for 16 years. Yes, you're right. The decision-making process of Japan is quite slow because they focus more on the micro levels and their focus is more on the consensus-based decision-making, right? So the consensus-based decision-making takes a lot of time. But having said that, their execution is very fast. The ones they have decided, the execution is very fast. In contrast, Indian side, they have a let's say a single point or dual 1 or 2 points of decision making. We don't go through a consensus based because there's a manager who decides everything, right? In Japanese system, even if the manager has the right to decide, he will never decide on his own. He will actually get a consensus from everybody. Right, that takes a lot of time, right? That is one aspect to it. And the second aspect to it is the decision making in the Indian system is more at a macro level, right? So if at a macro level things look good, the decision is already made. The decision is made. But for the Japanese, they need the micro level details for a decision to be made. So this is one of the major reasons why it takes a lot of time. And yes, that actually frustrates the Indian side. The long decision making frustrates the Indian side, and vice versa also. When the Indian side is very aggressive and they want results faster, it frustrates the Japanese side also. So both sides it's there, and that is where I would say people like us in the panel who have India-Japan experience can smoothen that, right? Smoothen that, because we have experience of both sides, the India and Japan side, and bridging that would help this ecosystem of Japan-India relationship, right? Because without like without without a what do you call a bridge which understands both sides, I think it will be a difficult to have a successful project or a successful business relationship here. Right. That is my take on it. And coming to the ecosystem that we have to build is, like, let's say we have to build interactions such as Konnichiwa Pune, which IJBC is doing a very good job about bridging this gap and smoothing and bringing the understanding between Indian side and the Japan side. Right. So that this itself is a part of the ecosystem, I would say, and we would have to build on this to develop more interactions between the Indian side and the Japanese side. So that will actually reduce. I see it has reduced in the past 5-6 years, right? Ever since PM Abe and PM Modi had those initial conversations, I've seen a lot of improvement in the Japan side, on the Japan side, and also a lot of interactions between India and Japan. So I think that also is a part of the ecosystem that we probably will have to try and build it to the next level. Hope I've answered your question.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a good perspective. That basically that means there is a bridge always required in India-Japan business development relationship.
Let me also, at a final point, let me also share an interesting point where this decision-making process, consensus-based decision-making process, actually has its roots. The decision-making process of Japanese firms has its roots in Japan's feudal period. Large population depended on rice farming, and rice farming was not what we call due to economies of scale. Rice farming was done collectively, and the decisions that were made was done collectively, and that is where probably I heard that the roots of this consensus-based decision making lies. That's an interesting fact from there.
Very interesting anecdote. Very interesting fact.
Yeah.
Although rice farming in India is also a collective way of doing it, but I think we have left it to rice farming.
Yes.
So taking the same topic, Sunil-san, you have also developed your business from scratch in Japan.
Yeah.
What is your perspective on this fact and going about it, both from a point of view of decision making as well as an ecosystem development, because you know the India side also very well.
Correct. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this panel today. Thanks to Konnichiwa Pune IJBC to create this platform between Japan and India and foster some dialogue, communication, business, and education amongst participants. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So thanks to Anil as well. He has covered some of those points. Yeah. So basically, I think each country, meaning, has its own way of doing things, right? Business in India. So if a Japanese comes to India, they struggle in India. Vice versa, when we go to Japan, we struggle. So a point is whom to talk to. Like if I'm going to Toshiba or if I'm going to Hitachi, how to start, meaning, so or whom to start with. So many times what happens is, till reaching that exact right person who will open doors for you, that itself takes time when you go to Japan. Likewise, it happens in India as well. And there, I think, as Anil mentioned, you need, if there is someone who actually points out that talk to this person or connect to this person, and then that reduces or condenses that some time frame to reach that. Two, as again, in Japan, the decision making is slow. One other reason is the timelines that they look for. So in Japan, if my own personal health life is for 100 years, my retirement is still 70 years, I don't have any pressure to take any quick decision, right, tomorrow. Or so many times, even my Japanese friends tell me, like, Sunil, why you are hurrying so much? You should make all the mistakes till the age of 50. After 50, you start thinking seriously about your business. And I say, like, either in India, people want results in 18 months. My own employees ask me, why aren't we growing fast, and so on. Whereas my Japanese counterpart is saying, take it slow. Why too much hurry? So the timelines that they see versus we are seeing sometimes are a bit different. So many times we just want to rush in. So again, that's one thing where we need to moderate our expectations sometimes. And thirdly, I think is, again, as the decision making is different. Obviously, in India has different making. But now that we all know that Japan has this consensus making, each of these participant or stakeholder who is involved in that consensus making needs some different set of information. So even if I want to take a product, if I am trying to sell something, if I'm trying to take say agri product or whatever, the manager will look from a say cost perspective or something. The engineer might look from a security or a quality perspective because they have to maintain that product or something. So many times what happens is our own preparation, my own preparation, even after 20 years in Japan or whatever, it's not enough. So if somebody is able to take all these documents or whatever required thing from each perspective, you again condense that decision making. Because otherwise, every time you go, they are going to ask, hey, by the way, you talked about security, and what about quality? Next time you take about quality, somebody asks, hey, what about space? Why is this much space required? Why is not this much space? And so on. You just, and then you feel that, okay, it's going to take 2 years. So again, how to address this? Who are the stakeholders and what I'm supposed to do all this? So again, this could help one in moderating expectation about the so one is that part where decision making, yes, it takes time, obviously due to differences in business, what they want, what each stakeholder wants, timelines they see. B is lastly, I feel both ways it takes same time. In Japan, in India, what happens is we want chalo yaar, shake hands karte, immediately we want to start something. Let's go. Without planning, we'll jump in, and anyway it will take 1 year, because now when it comes, then we start planning and we might end up. Whereas in Japan, when you do business, it takes anyway 6 months, 8 months to decide something, and last 2 months they will again do the same planning exactly. So again, it takes 1 year same. So by and large, I think it takes time, but again, ecosystem is important. Organizations like IJBC are important. People who are staying there, like Anil is there, you are there, or Yogi-san is there. Whoever are there can be connected, and again, information or their trust can be leveraged. The trust that they have created in that market or the society can be leveraged to reach out again and understand better. So, and lastly, training of your own staff or own members, sales team, or the pre-sales team, or the delivery teams is equally important in building that ecosystem. Yeah, thanks a lot. I hope I have covered some points.
I think one of the points, I have also a personal experience from what you mentioned, that every time I think they have multiple spaces in which they take the decision. As you said, somebody's talking of space, and somebody's talking of technology, and somebody's talking of the financial parts, you know, and 3Coins and all these people, the amount of samples you take color A and they said, oh, didn't you bring color B and C? And, you know, carrying 3 suitcases up 4 floors, there's no Ramus, right, in Japan. So, so yeah, so this is something definitely there. So, Abhishek-san, you've been dealing with patents, and I'm sure patents, etc., form a very important part of the decision making with respect to also the basic business in Japan. So, coming to the same topic of decision making, what would be your take on this? Can I see Abhishek-san then?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Yes. I think Anil san and Sunil san already explained very well the overall decision-making process and how it can be influenced.
Yeah.
So I have only three things to say. One is on definitely you mentioned about patents. So patents in general, patents is a long, it's a long decision-making process. In India, if you see people come up with an invention and they just wanted to go and file a patent, whether it is patentable, this, that, nobody bothers. Now people have started bothering. But if you look at from Japanese perspective, the interesting thing is once you have a patent, they will rigorously take it through all the process of understanding, yes, whether it makes commercial sense to go for a patent. Is it really the new one, that a new technology that we have to patent? So there also their decision making process is very well defined, streamlined with respect to, compared to Indian MNCs. So that is there, and also what I believe is that in general, overall, if I see decision making process, I have realized that, and from the business development point of view, when we have internal influencers, it might, the time taken for getting to a final level of execution is definitely the same. But if you have an influencer and if you are keeping in touch, it's relationship driven. It's not one transaction. Okay, I have done one transaction and my job is over. I have given one sales presentation and my job is over. It's not that way. I have given one sales presentation, then I have found something interesting for them, so we keep passing on. Then there is something else we are touch basing with them, and slowly you build up the relationship over a period of time, and then you finally start reaping on the fruits. So these I think are the best things. And the third point from my side will be, over a period of time, if you see lot, right now definitely not that much of Indian philosophy influencing Japanese businesses compared to Japanese business philosophy trying to influence Indian businesses sometimes, or at least who are there. But over a period of time, it might come that Japanese business, decision-making process will get little more, time dependent. And when some Indians are expecting that, okay, fine, overnight things are going to happen, they will also come to a level of understanding that, okay, it's at least not 18 months, but we have to wait for 6 months, 1 year, build the relationship, and then it will happen. So as an organization, the more and more dialogues we will have, there will be a cultural shift over a period of time, not today, tomorrow, but maybe 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades time, that we will probably be able to influence even Japanese decision making, or at least convey some message that, okay, you are taking a decision with well thought out process, but maybe you have to cut down some time on that just to be global. So this is just a thought, and as an organization, if you can bridge those things, then it's nothing like it.
Great. So this is on the decision making. What would be your take on the next one, which is, from a development of an ecosystem? Because it's always largely felt that the ecosystem between the two countries with respect to business development needs to be formed. And that's how then only people will be thinking. So do you have any perspective there?
Yes, of course. That ecosystem has to be built, and that ecosystem has to be built from both the sides. It should not be only for Indians telling them how to do business in Japan. It has to be even for Japanese companies and Japanese people to tell how to do business in India. So the more we move towards those kind of ecosystem, we will probably be able to see more actual transaction And the overall trade deficit that we have will probably be able to reduce those things. Timeline.
Fine. Thank you so much for this. Harshad-san, you have been, of course, working with more on the legal side with Japanese companies, and the legal documentation, which is also a very important aspect of any business development. What is your sort of view on how do they handle legal documentation, etc.? Do they take the same time in the decision-making process, or is it much faster with respect to operational business or regular business?
So thank you so much for inviting me for this program. And I would like to also initially thank IJBC and also the Consulate of Japan for organizing Konnichiwa Pune. Coming to our question about legal issues between the different transactions which happen between the two countries by the entrepreneurs. The one basic important thing which is different is a litigation, or one can say any legal process is in India is very consequential, while in Japan they do it to secure their whole process. That's the basic difference of approach between the two ways of doing business. Here as many laymen while doing business in India, for example, they first do things, and if things backfire, they try to address it through legal processes. While in Japan, they take all due care about their own perspective challenges which might occur during conducting business, and they try to address those problems not only legally but also in a practical way, so that of course it of course takes a lot of time, but these are the two aspects where both our countries stand very different.
We've got an overall perspective on the decision making, ranging from operational business to patents to legal. I'll now like to take the domain a little different from where we started with the decision making. India is booming, and India is going to become a big startup nation, as it's already number one has. And how do you compare innovation and entrepreneurial capacity between Japan and India? Because this word startup is very good, but unless there's no innovation, there will be no entrepreneurial capacity that will be developed among the people. Japan was once renowned for creating powerful global companies, especially in manufacturing industries, automobile, consumer electronics, etc. What happened? We don't see the number of patents filed in Japan versus the number of companies that are established. There is a huge difference. It files a lot of patents, but the number of companies that are established are much less. So is there a lack of innovation and entrepreneurial capacity in Japan? And how do you compare it with India? Anil-san, again, we'll start the round with you. You're muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry, I was on mute. So I think, you're right. There's a big contrast. The number of patents filed is quite huge. I think Japan ranks number 3 in the world in terms of patents. But when you look at the entrepreneurial activity, it's way too low. It's probably at the bottom of the table, right? So I probably think the main reason is the social and cultural aspects of it, right? So in general, the Japanese culture is not the one that encourages risk-taking behavior or pursuit of unexplored opportunities, right? So Japanese society usually emphasize on conventionality, consistency, community, and they're very risk averse. So that is probably the reason why the entrepreneurial activity is not very high. Still, there are a lot of parents. There are a lot of parents who encourage people to either go into bureaucracy or go into what you call big companies like Mitsubishi, Mitsui, and all those kind of this one. They don't encourage people to start up their own Rakuten or Gree or Dena or those kind of entrepreneurial activity, right? So probably it's more about social and cultural aspects which actually reduces this. That is why you cannot see much of entrepreneurial activity in Japan. And not only that, one more aspect is uh, any Japanese, if he wants to get a job, it is quite easy, right? It's not that difficult. So why would he actually spend time on entrepreneurial activity, right? In India, in contrast, in India, it is totally different. In India, also we have that cultural aspects. Even let's say if you what you call rewind 20, 30 years back, everybody wanted a government job.
Yes.
Everybody wanted to get into UPSC, IAS, and everything. It is the same thing that is there in Japan also. But the stark difference is basically in India, the ratio between the number of aspirants and the number of jobs available, and in Japan, the number of aspirants and the number of jobs available is different. So that is the reason why India has changed from that government job mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset now. And especially there's one more factor to it. There's one more catalyst to it, because a lot of Indians have studied in US in the last 40-50 years. A lot of Indians have studied in US and UK, and that actually there is a lot of influence from US and UK these days. So this all put together has changed, although the base was the same 30 years, 40 years back, where Japan also wanted this government jobs and big company jobs and everything. India also wanted to be, parents wanted to be, want the kids to be employed in Tatas and government jobs, IAS, IFS, and all the stuff. But the major difference is what I've said, that the influence of US, UK in India, and also the ratio of aspirants to the jobs. That probably has changed the scenario. Hope I've answered the question.
Yeah. So there's a lot of what influence of the education that the people have taken, their exposure to different communities where there has been an entrepreneurial activity at a large scale has brought that back. Yeah, very true. Sunil-san, you have been in the IT domain, and today you see that most of the founders, great founders we have had in India, some of them in the last 2 months you have seen have gone unicorn, gone IPOs, etc. And one thing that we definitely realize in India is that it's not only the founder who's got to have the entrepreneurial gene. It's all the people which make that company have to behave as entrepreneurs within that larger mass of entrepreneurship. Do you think that the same thing in Japan, companies have been built due to some involvement of beyond entrepreneurship sort of a passion, or is it that standard innovation and great products that they made?
Yeah, I think there was again slight this thing, but I think I understood the question. So basically, I think some of the points Anil has covered, but one is in India, I think everybody is an entrepreneur. Everybody has some idea. You ask anyone, he'll come and say, I have some this, we can do this, we can do that, and so on. Whereas in Japan, the economy is mature. Everybody has everything. By and large, your basic needs are covered. So as an entrepreneur, many times you want to solve a problem. you find something. So in Japan, entrepreneurship is happening. There are innovations happening, but they're happening in different areas. For example, in the areas of elderly, for example, elderly or equipments or tools to support elderly, because the aging population is a big problem there. Or in automation, in factory automation, because there is a shortage of workers or shortage of people. Whereas in India, what is happening is we are seeing proliferation of, say, smartphones or mobiles, lowering of data packs, and obviously growing aspirations. So a lot of things, innovation is happening around convenience. So I can now order, say, Swiggy or Zomato or food, or I can order a medical checkup at my home, or I can see my net banking. So all these things are happening. So there are these different triggers. In Japan, what's happening is last 40 years, companies have invested in legacy systems, mainframes, this, that. So you cannot overnight change something. In India, new companies, new entrepreneurs are budding. So they are skipping all these investments, directly going on mobile or directly going on different new technologies, thereby reducing cost, starting on cloud and so on. So I think, and of course, scale, meaning the population is 100 million. Here we have a billion population. So if there are 10 entrepreneurs there, here there will be 100 entrepreneurs. So you suddenly see multiplication. There is a huge hunger, pent-up hunger in the Indian society for doing good, for doing great, or competing with the best. Whereas, as Anil also pointed, in Japan, what's happened is the first generation, the earlier generations have worked, the society has reached to a certain per capita of $40,000 plus. So you almost have everything. What next, kind of? Whereas here, I'm still struggling to go to buy a bike, and I want to go buy a second-hand car, a first-hand car, and so it's my first travel in flight. So people are going to the next stage, and there I think that's a huge push. That aspiration, that hunger is a huge push for entrepreneurship. So I see a lot people even starting something, home business, doing here and there, and coming up with different ideas, collaborating. So I think there again, in entrepreneurship or innovation is happening, but in certain different pockets. Whereas in India, again, it's happening everywhere. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. So I think as Anil-san brought out the influence of education, you brought out the influence of great aspiration. And I think that is how our tier 2, tier 3 cities are today growing very, very strongly in the startup domain. Abhishek-san, you've also been working long with Japan, and for anybody to work together with people there, whether you call them agents, partners, etc., we all feel that there should be a drive at the other end also. It's like you can't clap with one hand. So do you feel that from your perspective, when you are working with them, you feel that, yes, they have that same sort of a drive, the same sort of, they're driven to get the business, which means that they have that entrepreneurial urge? Or do you feel there's a lot difference in the approach from an Indian side and the Japan side?
I think the urge is not that much. I mean, our urge is much more compared to theirs. So in a couple of cases when we are now working with them, so in a practical scenario, we started giving them partners. So our partners developing business in Japan, it's always good. And for our kind of high-end business consulting, it's really important that we have someone there. And someone there also should be industry expert, or maybe 20, 30 years down the line in an industry, retiring and then helping us getting indoor, as Sunil earlier said, that you need an indoor. So you need somebody to take you inside the organization. So they are the people who are taking us to inside the organization. Now, they have already reached an age, so I can realize that, okay, they will not be coming to the other side. Last few years, we are interacting with some other consulting organizations there, and they have an aspiration to go to other countries. They have offices in China, they have offices in Taiwan and other places. But if you see their urge to come to India, that's probably not that much yet. It's definitely changing. So now I know almost 5 to 6 case studies where they like to go outside of Japan, but India probably might not be their first market always, depending on what they are doing. But answering just one plain sentence answer to your question on the urge, I think our urge are more compared to them.
Great. Thank you so much. Harshad, you must be having a day-to-day interaction because you're deep into the legal part, the documentation, etc., which requires a continuous effort back and forth of papers and ability to understand. Again, I feel, as I said, that at every step, there is that entrepreneurial feeling where you feel a sense of ownership, I would say. It comes from a sense of ownership. How do you evaluate this when you're dealing with people, especially with the exchange of documentation or correctness of the documentation?
Rajeevji, so Rajeevji, here, I would like to also speak about, the entrepreneurial spirit between the two countries as well, because,
Sure.
Documentation part is one of the processes which results when two, entrepreneurs come together for an activity or a venture. Before getting into this, in my experience, when I lived in Japan for a while, I observed the basic difference between India and Japan is Japan is the land of convenience. Everything thrives, all the entrepreneurship activity thrives on solving convenience. Here in India, we are a land of challenges. So here people are solving challenges which are there. So naturally, what has happened is, if we talk subjectively about challenge is something which needs to be addressed with a very immediate effect. And while in Japan, everything is about convenience, is about in the whole process of experience, you would observe novel innovation which happens. While in India, we lack novel innovations because of many factors. These are the basic two difference between what happens in the respective countries, and the principal reason is there's a sociological term called haves and haves not. So Japanese are haves and we are haves not. So these are the our societies, they function in a different way and different environment. But in this process, I feel if we also look back into history, Japan was also at some point in time facing the same issues what India is facing right now. We might be very young as democracies, but in terms of entrepreneurial activity in Japan, I feel that the younger peer who has also lived in other countries. For example, if a Japanese has lived in US or say UK, similar like our young Indian people who have lived abroad and coming back to India for doing businesses, they are a bit keen. I'm talking about an age slot which is below 40. They are a bit keen to jump into entrepreneurship. And as our colleagues mentioned here, that the areas which they address, now I know a few people who are working in UNSDG goals, and they are having a venture on UNSDG goals. So this is which is very futuristic in terms of entrepreneurship compared to India. So these are the basic differences As far as legal issues are concerned, I think we have to go by the statutes, and the statutes are well defined. And principally speaking, one can go in any country. It is the way social changes happen. Those changes are addressed in forms of, laws eventually. So I think there are some changes which are happening in terms of entrepreneurship between in Japan and in India, of course. And I think that, the ways of doing things might be different, but, our cultures and our way of thinking are somewhere, they meet at a common point. If we see the whole Southeast Asia, or say Asian nations, one would always observe that, we principally identify ourselves in terms of value everywhere. A very small example might be, if one goes to Japan, one could find that, they also remove shoes outside their home at a designated area, just like ours, which we do here in our nation. So this is a very social aspect, but it is very deep rooted. So I think and due to now the interaction is much more than before, because the technology has enabled it. I think the younger peers, say, kids as young as 16 or 18, I see more Indian kids involved in exchange programs, which can help to understand culture at a very young age. And I'm sure that, each one of us, even one trip to any country, and which has which gives you a very rich experience, it helps us to inculcate values more quickly, because it inspires us in return. So I think that, what we saw until now is set to change in the coming course of years, for sure.
So I think your point is more about, that when you come to the entrepreneurial activity, Japan has, we are always solving challenges. So therefore, there is more entrepreneurial activity in where we need to solve a lot of things. Great. So taking these perspective forward, India, as you all know, as compared to Japan, has a great GDP growth. It's got a great population. It's got a huge trade imbalance with Japan. But the Japanese are always concerned about the actual market of Japanese products in India. Sunil-san just mentioned a while ago about, elder care products. To deal with developing actually elder care professionals for Japan. And there's a lot of people who've asked me that why can't you get the Japanese standard of elder care products into India? Because our population again is growing. But one of the greatest things that, a lot of concerns that the Japanese businesses have is about the gaps of doing business in India. They want to know more about the trade, what is the potential, the market entry, the investment, IT, economic policy, and they carry on and on and on and on. When the Indian businessman lands in Guangzhou in China or anywhere, and he has to just order 2 containers and get them, it doesn't happen the same way with trading with Japanese. How can Indian SME really develop the trust with Japanese companies and help them into entry in India? We all know brand Japan has definitely a higher perceived value than any other brands, right? But they are unable to penetrate the Indian market because this question answer Q&A just carries on. And if you look at a core businessman coming from a typical trading community, he is interested in what in Indian terms you will call it as dhanda, you know. He doesn't get into all these aspects of all these things. So is there a way that Japanese companies could be tuned to the Indian SME way of working? Anil san, we'll start with you.
I think it is difficult to say that Japanese companies will be tuned. That will probably never happen. All right. So to Indian style, but to make it successful, I think we need to come somewhere midway. Right. So to make it successful and practical, right? Because Japanese companies tuning them to Indian standards is also dangerous for India. We should probably learn a lot of things from Japan, right? And come midway and bring them to a point where they understand the cultural aspects of India. And then that probably will give a lot of what you call entry of SMEs into India, right? So asking them to come cover the whole ground is probably not practical and not in the best interest of India also. Yeah. Because in the best interest of India, there's a lot of things that we can learn from Japan, and there's a lot of things that we can implement from Japan. So despite our cultural differences, despite our business differences and everything, I would say we should go at least midway and expect less from them and probably adapt a lot of things from them. Like, let's say, for example, Toyota is doing a pretty good job in Karnataka, in Biddi, right? Yeah. They're not only training the local population with etiquettes and everything. They have plenty of things that they're doing good, right? Had we said that, no, you come to our place and you deal with us like we do, then these things would not have happened. We would not have learned all these things, right? That's a typical example. So I would say let's come midway and learn the best of their cultures, their business cultures, and teach them some of ours, right? And then that is when the marriage is done, right? Great. So that probably is the best way to do.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I think we have to, give and take has to be there in that domain.
Yes, and in Japanese system, I think trust is the basic thing that they look at. Once the trust is established, right, they will go beyond beyond what you expect. I think we don't have much time to explain what you call about some case studies and everything, but I've actually seen some of those companies where when they trust, they actually go beyond their responsibility.
Definitely. Sunil sir, your take on this in terms of how our Indian counterparts could have a better trust from the Japanese counterparts to be able to develop markets in India?
Okay. No, I think some of the points as Anil has covered, but I think on the Japan side also, if you talk to serious senior businessmen, there is a growing worry that they are missing on growth or they are missing on many things. Obviously, while the senior management thinks that way, they cannot push or make the entire organization change overnight. Okay. So in last 20, 30 years, what has happened is there is a lot of literature available in Japan, in Japanese about China market. If you go in a room and ask like who has visited China, out of 10 people, at least 6 people or 7 people will raise immediate hands that, okay, I have been, or my brother has been there, or I know someone. But if you take someone like ask about how many have you visited India, many of them have visited India in 1981, 1996, and they have some image of some India about that time. But last every 6 months, India is changing, revolving, and so on. So I think one few things that I really think that can be done is like more awareness about what's happening in India, how changes are happening, how it's convenient 20 years back when I went to Japan, everything was new to me, and I was zapped by the growth in Japan, the roads, the infrastructure. Today, when my engineers come to Japan after 2 weeks, they say it's so it's so back. Indian banking, or in the way things move in India, it's so convenient there out there, but here it's so inconvenient. And I am shocked. So what's happening in India, if that can be made available in Japanese literature, and then proliferated among different parts of society, students, housewives or husbands, and so on, business people. Secondly, more number of flights. You go to between Japan and China, there's a lot of, every week there are 100 flights, for example, whereas to India, it could be 10 flights. There's no flight to Pune as well. So the moment you are taking 2 days to reach a destination just to find out what it is, whereas you are taking 2 hours to Vietnam, 3 hours to China, 4 hours to Thailand, people think that this is more convenience. It's just a matter of convenience many times, a business decision. And then on the India side, how we can, so one is the flight, and these are not in our hands, of course, but some other things again is highlighting more success stories about India. In Japan, everybody knows still about just Maruti Suzuki, but what about Nissin noodles? My kids eat Nissin noodles like anything. Everybody I know eat Nissin. Casio, meaning the Casio calculator. Everybody has a Casio calculator in India. There could be entity data has 26,000 employees in India. Nobody knows that they have 26,000 employees here. And so there are at least 2 funds who are investing in startups. One of the biggest startups, Khatabook, has a lot of investment from Japan and so on. So I think if we can highlight these success stories again, both sides, there could be more interaction, more awareness, and of course, business is like a connection of people. Demand supply has to happen. Companies need growth, new markets, new consumers. Japanese management needs it. Indian style, we need all this investment, technology, and so on. So I think it's a good pairing. We need to bridge some of these parameters. Yeah, thanks a lot.
So I think what the point that you come out with is, the Indian marketing, and so in my own small experiences, I've also faced this whole challenge. India is very far, and what do we do in India beyond the first night of tandoori chicken, right? What's the next night? So it's a challenge. So Abhishek sir, what would be your take sitting in Pune and your travels, and how can Indian SME actually develop this whole trust factor with Japanese?
Start saying no. Don't say yes, it will be done tomorrow. It is not going to be done tomorrow. And then at the last moment, you cannot say, okay, fine, I'm not ready. I didn't get this, I didn't get that. This is happening. Stop giving any kind of excuse. Say the truth. If you can do it, say I will be able to do it. If you can't do it on time, say I won't be able to do it on time. They are very much accommodative. If you do a mistake, just acknowledge the mistake. Say, yes, I have done this mistake. Mistake is the part of the process. So build your trust by just being truthful to yourself. Have some patience. Everything cannot be done tomorrow morning. And don't believe that Jugaad is the biggest thing to do. Jugaad in a sustainable way might be good. So start believing in frugal innovation rather than pure Jugaad, pure Indian Jugaad. So that's it from my side.
Thank you. Harshad-san, your take on this factor? You see, you represent a Japanese law firm in India also. So there is obviously a trust factor, probably both from a personal perspective. And do you think that it's easier to get this trust factor, or what factors play an important part in that? I think we are just 5 minutes away from time. So
yes. So as you mentioned, speaking about trust, it does not come easy at all. I remember I've spent interacting with the Japanese for more than 3 years, and it was not just it takes a while, of course, but speaking about these factors about culture, or Japanese coming to India, when I had been to Japan, I saw that Indian restaurants play a very vital role about identifying our cuisine. That's how the first thing a foreigner would know about a nation is through tourism or say a cuisine. So I personally think that the Indian restaurants in Japan have done an excellent job of introducing, Indian way of life, at least a glimpse of Indian way of life to the Japanese, uh, and uh, and the Japanese they at least prima facie I feel that they enjoy the experience. I know some of my acquaintances who regularly wish me Diwali, who regularly miss their Indian visits, uh, and they look forward to come again often. Uh, these small things paves a way to have a profound connection between the two nations as well as people. As far as the business part is concerned, as Rajeev ji, you mentioned that it is very easy to go to China, book certain products, and ship them back. But at some point in time, the Chinese they tried to address that what the world needs. I think if we have much more faith and much more trust in the Japanese innovation, I think we can invite the Japanese venture to develop products together, or at least technologically support us and have successful joint ventures for a constructive product. We operate in India, but the technology is provided by the Japanese according to the Indian needs. So an innovation is done according to the Indian needs. So this whole process prima facie might sound very convenient, but it would involve a lot of innovation on by the Japanese and the Indian together.
Sure. Thank you.
Once this particular partnership works, it could, I think, in my opinion, do wonders and
Thank
be an alternative to the rest of the world.
Yes, so relationship and trust is something which we've come out with, and there are many factors that will go down to actually developing that. I always give an example from my own personal experience. We did large amounts of business with this 300 yen chain called Three Coins, which is everywhere in Japan, loved by the Japanese also. I could never believe that they could get an Indian floor rug for 300 yen, which in Indian rupees is also, pretty cheap. And the general manager, every time he came to India to buy, he brought one suitcase full of Japanese food as well as Japanese cutlery, which he would actually take it out in my home and say half day is for my own cooking to produce Japanese food. All that he wanted was potatoes and eggs at my place and the rest. So I think multiple factors go in to develop this trust. I think we've just completed an hour. We have the next panelist on the screen. Thank you very much. I think there's a good takeaways in terms of, we need somebody in Japan to bridge the gap. The education system in India, where children have gone out, has helped in building the entrepreneurial spirit. The challenges which are there in India helps to build entrepreneurship. And of course, as Sunil-san said, that there are so many flights to China and Vietnam, etc. Unless we market India well, and as you rightly said, we have documentation where everybody is able to read all aspects about India and not just Taj Mahal, right? It's got to go beyond that to be able to understand what it's all about. There's a lot of work in progress, and I'm sure we all have to give it our piece of time and energy to build on that. Thank you very much, Anil san, Sunil san, Abhishek san, and Harshad san for this debate, discussion. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Devashri, for taking this forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a very well managed and concluded session. Challenges in business development between India and Japan. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, Mr. Rajeev Gupta.